Welcome to the latest edition of Coda's Plugging Away podcast. My name's Francis Norman, and I am absolutely delighted today to be speaking with Tommy and Rachael from our long-term partners and collaborators on decommissioning conferences from the Offshore Network, coming to us from London. So welcome, Tommy, and welcome, Rachael.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Absolute pleasure. No, I'm very much looking forward to having a conversation with you about, I guess, how we got to where we are now in terms, or how you've got to where you are now, really, with the D&A conferences that you run, particularly the one that you run here, and also what the highlights are going to be for the one that we've got coming up in a few weeks' time. So maybe Tommy, if we start with you, just how did you end up in this crazy world of doing conferences, mate?
Yeah, sure. So on the notes here it says what was my life before Offshore Network, and this is always a bit of a shock for everyone. But in the early 2000s, I was actually like a DJ and a radio producer. So this world of podcasts is actually relatively familiar. So I was with the BBC for a long time, and then with a digital radio company in the US, and that's what I was doing. And then the sort of gig economy was very much in that world. We were all one-man bands basically, and attaching ourselves to presenters or DJs and all of that sort of stuff to produce for them. And then the idea of radio started to decline, and a lot of my work was at the BBC, which is a public service. So they started to bring more things in house, and I had a flat in London and had to pay for it basically. So then I joined, at the time, what was sold to me as being a business intelligence company, which was where I worked previously. And I quickly learned that all that is business to business media. It's exactly the same format. You're building media content, be it a podcast like this, or be it a conference. You're finding an audience and you're delivering it an audience. So the B2C is very different than B2B, but that's where I kind of got my training for the B2B world. And after 4 years there, I'd kind of learned all I could learn, or at least I thought so. And I made the plunge to go out on my own. It was more of a timing effort because I didn't have a mortgage, I didn't have children. I didn't even live with my wife at the time, but she was my girlfriend at the time. Didn't even live together, so it was just me in a room, and me and two of my mates decided to give it a go. And on our journey around the world, those guys have been replaced with other partners, and people like Rachael and Erin, who you guys know really well, have joined and been developed into our senior management team. And that's it. But yeah, it's a crazy world with a relatively silly beginning in many ways.
That's fascinating. So is Tommy Angel your actual name? Because it has that ring of a stage name.
It does, and it's my parents who decided to give me the name of a toddler when I was a toddler, and it sort of stuck. So yeah, it's Tommy Angel, and
Yeah,
and
you've
that
never
was
been
my.
Thomas.
I've never been a Thomas. No, it's Tommy Angel. Yeah, I know,
Yeah.
ridiculous, but there
It's
we
like they
are.
were setting you up for this career from birth.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I did one of these not that long ago with a guy who started out as, and a phase of his career he was selling beer, making, running a microbrewery and selling beer. So, the conversations and the stories, the backstories are always so interesting. You've got to have something at least as interesting as this, Rachael, haven't you?
Absolutely not. I came straight out of university and came here. So that's literally my story. I've been here for 5 years now. So yes, I've kind of stuck with it, which I'm very lucky to have done. But yeah, it was my first job out of uni, and Tommy obviously decided he wanted to take that risk, and then here we are.
Yeah. Well, there you go. Very good. Yeah, that's a little disappointing, I've got to say. I was hoping for some great grand
Yeah.
story.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
I feel like Tommy's really set me up for failure there.
Yeah, like you'll have to make something up maybe for the next one. So then the Offshore Network, you've been around for a while. Why decommissioning conferences? Because that was I have a recollection of the very early conversations that we had with yourself and with Erin, but why get into that space?
Sure. So I think well, there's a number of answers really. One is that if I put my horrible sort of businessman hat on, you just look for a gap in the market. So you're trying to look for an underserved, and I'm just going to talk media here. You're just looking for an underserved market with an audience that's not getting the content they need. And if you zoom out on that, what you have is what was often considered the ugly sister of the oil and gas industry. Everyone loved like you. If you went on a oil and gas news website, it'd be drilling, drilling, drilling. This has been found off the coast of Guyana. This has been found off the coast of Brazil. Greenfield, Greenfield. We started in well intervention, which at the time was like the ugly sister of that world. And they were like, well, we're not interested in what's already there. We're interested in what's new. So there was this underserved group of wells people who really cared about integrity. They cared about plugging and abandonment, and they cared about the existing assets, which was kind of away from what the news was saying. So that's where we started. And then what happened was it went a line further back than there into decommissioning. So our plug and abandonment community were like, look, there's this other world in decommissioning, which is completely underserved, and it's happening. And not only is it happening, it's probably going to be bigger than the industry. We're probably going to be removing assets for longer than the industry has existed. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. The amount of materials that are in the ocean is. I mean, you've got the stats on this for Australia. When you start to compile that with the other regions, it's phenomenal. So, as I said, from my sort of businessman's hat, it was an easy market. From the interest side, if I change hats, it's at like the hero end of the industry, right? So it's at the end of the industry that's doing some good, that's, maybe more environmentally focused. They really care about doing things the right way. And we know that because in the meetings that I had 2 years ago, we had Greenpeace, Maritime Union, Woodside, Exxon, all these guys in the same room. And it's almost for the first time ever, they're trying to answer the same question, and they're on the same team. So from my point of view, there's two sides to it, but yeah, that's it. From a sort of coalface point of view, this is Rachael and Erin's world. So I don't know if, Rachael, you've got a bit more to say on the sort of the detail end of it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess from a decommissioning side, I just sort of fell into this. It wasn't Tommy was like, you're going to run, D&A Aus next year, and that's sort of how I ended up doing it. But it's been I think it's such an interesting industry because there's so much work and there's so many things to do, and everyone's got to do it. And it's so interesting speaking to people that everyone just keeps pushing it off for as long as possible. But now it's getting to a point when the work 100% has to be done. And it's interesting looking at all the different regions where we operate and seeing the difference in maturity across those different regions, how far along they are in, I guess, the cycle, which I just find, really interesting. And then people having those cross learnings internationally, which I think is absolutely fantastic. And I think Australia's in such a unique position at the moment due to the amount of stuff that's going on and the position that they are in the sort of the decom cycle. And I think that's why I just enjoy running it here so much.
And I imagine running, is it 4 or 5 D&A events that you run around the world? Running 4 or 5 decommissioning events around the world would be amazing in that space, Rachael and Tommy. That you're seeing the different approaches, different evolution. Companies who maybe start out coming to an event that you do, I don't know, let's say they come to the one that you do in the US, and then they through that they branch out, and it's like, oh, right, now we want to work in Latin America, or we want to work in Australia, or we want to work in Asia Pacific. And you then see them, you almost, I guess, see them following you around and appearing at different conferences, bringing their ideas there, learning from there, going back to the other markets. You must see some really interesting and get involved in some really interesting conversations through
Yeah,
all of this as you're putting these things together.
yeah, 100%. I mean, personally, I do the conference in Australia and I do the one in Rio. So I do completely, polar opposite sides of the world, I guess. And it's so interesting looking at the different perspectives and the conversations that sort of people are having. But people are so interested to learn about what other people are doing, and whether that's from the regulatory side, whether that's from like an operations side or a technology side. Everyone just wants to hear from each other and learn about kind of what people are doing. But then at the end of the day, everyone has the same problems, like everyone has the same things that they want to solve. So one thing we hear kind of globally is the collaboration side of operators wanting to work together to kind of solve the same problem. And everyone talks about it. We talk about it in Australia, we talk about it in Rio, from a resource shortage perspective and a supply chain perspective, it's sort of been talked about for so long. This is what we want to do and this is how we want to do it. We just want to work together, but it just takes one person to say, actually, I'm going to start this and I'm going to do it. But it just seems like something we've been talking about for so long. And that's, I think, the same in Rio, whether that's the same in Australia. I'm sure it's the same in Houston as well, which I know less about. But it is interesting how you can have pretty much the same conversation on two completely opposite sides of the globe, which I think is so interesting.
So you started, for us, certainly for us here in Australia, you started 4 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
We're heading now toward the 5th conference. How have you seen that evolution, I guess, from what was, I refer to it as, we were down in the dungeon at the hotel. It was the first conference here after the Western Australian borders opened after COVID. I remember well feeling sick as a dog for 2 weeks afterwards because one of the overseas visitors very generously brought the COVID virus with them. But I also remember it as being a really, really interesting event. And it was the first one that I think it was the first real, for us, it was the first proper decommissioning event that I felt that was run by an independent organisation rather than a technology body. And it was very different. How have you seen it, and how have you seen it grow and evolve here over those years?
I guess we've just seen so much momentum behind it. I think that obviously I wasn't here for the very first one, so I can't comment on that. But the step between each one, and I think especially between, what was it, 24 to 25 was absolutely insane. And I think it's a reflection of the market, and it's a reflection of the momentum of the decommissioning industry. And I think what started as kind of one of our small events has now grown to one of our largest in the portfolio in, as you said, a matter of 4 years, which I just think is such a reflection on the industry and the amount of now, time and money and kind of focus that people are putting towards it, which is, obviously absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, I think from our point of view as well, from a independent, which I think is an important word to use, is that there's no agenda with us. We'll come in and understand what challenges are. Rachael and Erin will probably do between them 60 to 80 research calls with, buyer side, seller side, what doesn't marry up, what does marry up, what regulations are coming, what regulations are you struggling with, what are the timelines, is it realistic, rah, rah. And what you get from the process that these guys do is a full view of where the gaps are, where things aren't aligning, and more importantly, where do people think they are aligning and they're not, and what does that mean they're headed to? And that's how our agendas are developed. So there's a really interesting dynamic where sometimes it's like we're a .com, not a .org, and does that matter? But a wise person once said to me, you need, if you're going to do something, you need staff who are paid and focused on doing that. So that's exactly why we exist. So we have the effort, the time, and the focus to really drill into this. Whereas, as you said, sort of a volunteer organization, they might just look at cementing because that's what they're focused on right now. So we're certainly not technical, but the issues we're dealing with are non-technical issues as well. As Rachel says, it's collaboration, it's approach and regulations, is your supply chain set up? Is there a spine of the supply chain you can call on that has a narrative, a start and a finish? And where are the gaps in that?
Yeah. Well, if you were to think about the past conferences, and again, maybe sticking with the Australian ones, would there be highlights for you through there? I mean, clearly, as you say, Rachel, that's huge step that we had 2 years ago, probably initially, and then the second one again when we went from the Duxton to the Crown, and then last year the massive change in the footprint there. But from a content, from a experience, if you like, from just the way it runs, are there bits in there that you would think, oh, these are the real thing, these are the things that have been the inflection points that have taken it from, as you've described it, one of the smaller ones to one of the bigger events in the portfolio? Are there things in there that either of you would sort of point at in there?
I think a big one is our relationship now with the operators and them coming and sharing their case studies and what they're actually working on, and not just kind of their successes, but coming and saying, this is where we've struggled and this is where we need help, or this is our challenges with this. And I think that's incredibly important for the industry to learn not just what's going well so other people can kind of learn from that, but also when things haven't gone so well as well. And I think each year we've had kind of the operators kind of getting involved more and participating more and speaking about their exactly what's happening as their activities picking up, which I think is great. And then also from the regulatory side, because obviously they're a massive part of the community as well. I mean, with this year that we've got, DMP, DSR, NOPSEMA, and the sort of South Australian government joining us. And each year that's been, I think that's been such an important part and a way that we can see the conference is growing and kind of increasing in, I guess, credibility as well, if that's the right word. So I would say that's probably what I see it as. I don't know if you have anything, Tommy.
I think it hits all fronts of the community. So I think obviously the footprint and the exhibition is an echo of the supply chain, and that's busy both days non-stop. The after hours drinks reception, the networking side is phenomenal, and that really is that spine, the way that you and Erin designed that exhibition. So it's not just booths and we sell to anyone, but it's broken up not geographically, excuse me, it's broken up by discipline. So we have vessels and marine, we have plugging and abandonment, we have cutting, and so on and so forth. Means what you're looking for you can find easily, and it's balanced. The next bit is the room next door will probably have a very different type of person in it who are interested in regulations, collaboration, whatever it happens to be. And then obviously the backing of that is CODA and the sort of wrapper of that entire industry in Australia. So it really does take us from the very top of the pyramid at a government level all the way through the supply chain to the people who have certified nuts and bolts. And that's really important. And I would say that's unlike other events, even potentially other events that we have in our portfolio. Do you need a regulatory specialist? Well, we got one. Do you need someone who's got ISO compliant steel? Yeah, they're over there. Do you need a vessel? Yeah, they're over there. Do you need help entering the market? Sure, Francis is over there. He's the guy you need to talk to. So it's got that whole wrapper around it, which I think is just, brilliant. And for 2 days to get that whole group of people who can solve all these problems that Australia has under one roof is rare.
Yeah. I think when I with you talking there, Rachel, the word I guess that came out for me is that over the 4 years to date and 5th year that we're in now has been trust. That that the people that come along, you go the first one of any event, and there's a lot of reticence. People tend to sit toward the back of the room. they're all there to listen. They're not necessarily there to ask questions. And then as they come back the next year and the next year and the next year, they realize that this is a caring environment, if you like. It's a safe space where people can come in, they can talk about their problems rather than just, aren't I awesome? Look at this wonderful piece of equipment that I've made, or this project that I've just finished. People actually can come along and share some and show you some of the scars as well. At least in a metaphorical sense, we don't want to see real scars at any of these events. Thank you very much. But and you don't get that at a lot of other events. It's something that I would say I experience probably more at yours than I do at most of the other decommissioning events that I attend around the world. Is that sort of feeling of a safe space with consistency, and with there's a lot of people there now who will have been to the last 3, the last 4. We should start doing a bit of a count and see who's done them all as we get further into this. But that's brilliant. Yeah. So we've got coming up now in 6 weeks as we record this, 6 or 7 weeks, and hopefully that hasn't left too much of a, oh my word, it's as soon as that feeling for either of you.
Yeah, can't believe it's come around so fast.
What are you looking forward to for this next one? And maybe start with you, Rachel, given you're the one that's up to your eyeballs in building it.
I think I always look forward to seeing the expo. I think it's growing again this year. I think we're about 50% bigger, which is absolutely fantastic. And I think definitely last year that was a big highlight, and is seeing that, and seeing everyone there and having that so busy and so full, which that's definitely a highlight, and something that I always enjoy seeing. And I think another thing is, I think each year there's often like a running theme of something that's, I guess, being the most talked about at the moment. Last year we did obviously a session on vessel scarcity and kind of that perspective in Australia. And this year it's about kind of ports and infrastructure, which is what's being talked about at the moment, which we have a session on. So I think the great thing about the conference is that it's not our job, I guess, to answer the questions, but it's to create a space where people can talk and to kind of discuss and answer the questions, I guess, themselves, and put kind of people in the same room across topics that are difficult and are complicated, because there's no simple answer to kind of any of this. And I guess going into that as well, talking about the Northern Endeavour, obviously hearing the update on that each year is obviously a massive highlight for a lot of people. And we have obviously DISA coming to share on that, as well as CB&I, or previously Petrofac, coming to share on that as well. So I think that's going to be a really interesting session and very kind of relevant for what people are talking about at the moment. So I'd say those are my highlights.
Yeah. And Tommy?
Yeah, I mean, it's twofold for me. One is obviously I get a huge kind of sense of pride for the work that Rachael and Erin have done on this, and taking it from it's a sort of a kernel of an idea through to huge flagship and huge exhibition, and that is it's just excellent. And from the community perspective, so the audience, you're saying the word trust earlier on, which is quite right, is when I look back on some of these companies, and as Rachael said, that they're talking together, and different operators or different influential groups or environmental groups, they were very cagey 4 years ago. They were very quiet. They were very on the back foot, bringing lawyers along, that whole 9 yards. And I remember thinking at the time, oh, if they just let the guard down a bit, if they just, left the lawyers at home, we might actually be able to have a conversation now. And that's where we're at. And that's what's fantastic about it, is we're actually making progress now. And the reality is that's going to lead to greater efficiencies. And I just hark my mind back that when I was talking about the Greenfield news, these guys work together all the time. They were sharing who's got a drilling rig where, when, oh, right, you mob it here, leave that stuff on, we'll then add to it, we'll take it back out. The operators in other parts of the life cycle have worked together fine. So this shouldn't really be any different. It can be done, but when you talk about liabilities and share prices, there's obviously a concern. So it's nice to see those walls coming down and people really collaborating to make things better, more effective, more efficient.
I think what is, I also think, really beneficial about face-to-face conferences, because I know we're entering such a digital world, and we're saying this obviously all in different areas of the world at the moment, is not just, I guess, the conversations that happen in the conference room and all of that, but it's the people that you meet, say, in the expo or on coffee breaks. And that also allows for those sorts of conversations to happen that you wouldn't necessarily be able to have on a stage in a conference room. And is the people that you bump into over a drink or at the dinners or whatever. And you're able to have those sorts of conversations and you can build those sorts of relationships. So I think there will always be a place for, I think, face-to-face conferences to help solve these sorts of challenges and these sorts of issues that are more, I guess, have a lot more weight to them, and people are less likely to, I guess, share on a big stage, kind of their sort of challenges. So I do also think that's really important as well. And to hear people say, oh, I've met this person, or I spoke to this person, I heard about this project, or I've got their business card, or I'm talking to them later about this, and I've got a meeting set up. It really like, it makes me feel really happy when people get to do that.
Yeah. I think from my side, not wanting to repeat any of the things that you've said, which I would agree completely with both of you. One of the things that I really enjoy is the international visitors that we get. That when I think the first couple of years, a lot of the internationals were very much coming down here to see how could they sell their services to the Australian market, which is awesome, and that is absolutely a key part of an event like this. But I think as well, I'm hearing conversations now. It's much more, how can we learn together? That some of these international folks that are coming this year and that were here last year are coming because they want to be. They recognise now that the Australian market has moved on and is very active, and there's a lot happening. And it's not just, oh, here, look, I can tell you how to do it all because we do it like this in wherever they happen to come from. They're actually coming down here as well to learn alongside of and to learn from the Australian industry. And to me, that I think is just such a lovely thing, that it's an evolution. It's an evolution for the industry. And it's a recognition that the event itself is now at that point where it's the one that people look at in their diaries, and it'll be okay. Right now we're recording this, and I think OTC is going on in Houston. That for a lot of people is a flagship in their diary. First week of May, I'm going to be in Houston for OTC. I think a lot of people that work in decom now, that are looking at where the active markets are, and they want to learn or they want to be part of the journey, they now have that sort of, for us this time, 23rd, 24th of June, they look to see when the event is and say, right, I'm going to be in Perth, I'm going to attend, I'm going to speak, I'm going to whatever, and I'm going to coincide it with the opportunities to go and meet with clients, or if they're from a regulatory space, they're going to go and spend some time and meet with the regulators here, or they're going to meet with other operators here. And to me, that again is a big thing, because we are a long way from a lot of people that travel here. Even the folks that come down from Asia Pacific, they still have a 6 or 7 or 8 or 10 hour journey to get to Perth. So it's a big commitment to come down here. But people look at it now and see it as the conference itself is the flag, if you like, that gets them here. And then they'll look and say, right, a couple of days before, a couple of days after, we'll go and meet with some partners, peers, clients, suppliers, customers, whatever, while they're in town as well. And that I think that for me is that sort of extra piece that I would add to the from in terms of what the value brings of having this event. So it's good. So when is it and where is it? Just to get the last little bit in here, just to make sure that we don't go and close this and people think, when is this thing again?
It's the 23rd to the 24th of June, and we're back at the Crown, which is incredibly exciting. We love being there. because there's so much around and there's so much to do. So yes, I'll be flying out in about a month's time, which is absolutely terrifying. I'm trying not to think about it. I'm just keep just keeping going with it, and I'm very excited to kind of get out there and then see everyone.
Yeah, excellent. You'll be down here this year, Tommy, or are you?
I am not making it this year, which is quite frustrating, but it's because I've got this British Heart Foundation London to Brighton event, which is basically a bicycle race from London to Brighton, and yeah, I'm part of a charity fundraising group, and that's on Sunday the 21st, which is also uh, Father's Day here. So when we're talking about, scheduling of events, they couldn't have done that any worse, really. I mean, one, they're only a couple of days before D&A Oz, but also on Father's Day. So yeah, that's raised enough headaches for me to deal with. So yeah, I'm gonna miss it this year, but back next year, absolutely.
Good, good. Well, look, we are very excited to have you back down here, Rachel, and to continue working with both of you on this. And it's a highlight for us, for our market here, for our industry here, and I hope that folks who are listening in on this, if they're not already booked, will start looking at their travel budgets and their conference attendance budgets and think, yep, I want to get myself to that one, because it really is. For us, it's the flagship event here in Perth, here in Australia. So, yeah, look, thank you for sticking with it and putting on such a good event for us. Thank you so much for your time on the call today. And yeah, we'll look forward to seeing you in person or speaking with you, whichever way it works out. And Tommy, stay on your bike. Try not to find yourself in a hedge or anything like that.
Honestly, all of those things are going to happen, aren't they?
There's a chance. But if British Heart Foundation, at least you would hope, would have good medical support and a broom mic and everything crumbling along behind
Yeah.
you, these things.
I think the world we're in, it's film it and clip it up and make it go viral. So whilst you're on site, if footage of a relatively sort of unhealthy, chubby individual finding his way into a bush starts to circulate, you'll know it's me.
We'll watch out for that one, won't we, Rachel?
Yeah, 100% we will.
Oh, brilliant. So yes, look, thank you, and yeah, we'll see you soon.
All right, cheers. Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much for having us.